And we are back for episode 4.7. Our episode begins with another extra scene between Tyrion and Jaime. Jaime is angry with Tyrion for not taking the deal to go to the Wall, and Tyrion here says that he couldn't do it because he doesn't want his father to win. They then joke a bit about Jaime suicidally being his champion before Jaime reveals that the Mountain will be the Crown's champion. Now what you may not realize is that in the entire book series, Jaime and Tyrion share precisely 2 scenes together. They have breakfast together near the beginning of Game of Thrones, and they speak when Jaime frees Tyrion at the end of A Storm of Swords. That's it. Essentially, almost all brotherly affection the two share is conveyed through them thinking about events from the past or hearing stories from people. As for hearing about the Mountain as the Crown's champion, in the book Tyrion knew about this before the trial even began. Again, his trial by battle in the book is fairly suicidal. Next we get an odd extra scene where random nobodies with seemingly no fighting ability are put up against the Mountain for some reason. Cersei then welcomes the Mountain to the city. Now in the book, one big side effect of the Mountain coming to King's Landing is he has to leave Harrenhal in the Riverlands, where he's been torturing the leader of the Brave Companions. In the book, the Brave Companions cut off Jaime's hand. So the Mountain kills the leader of the Brave Companions and then leaves his number 2, Polliver, in charge of his men. Polliver, though, is killed by Arya and the Hound at the inn at the crossroads. Leaderless, both the Mountain's men and the Brave Companions disperse and have been wandering the world. George R. R. Martin has been slowly tying up the plot lines for all of these men, but there's quite a few of these guys still around. Next we get another extra scene of the Hound and Arya finding a man slowly dying. The Hound mercy kills the man and shows Arya where the heart is. They are then attacked by Biter and Rorg, companions of Arya back when she was heading to the Wall back in book and season 2. Arya and the Hound make quick work of them, with Arya stabbing Rorg in the heart. Now this whole scene is kind of a combination of a bunch of different scenes from the book. In the book, after the Red Wedding, Arya and the Hound do find a dying soldier who needs to be mercy killed, and the Hound shows Arya where the heart is. Arya then uses that knowledge to mercy kill a wounded boy in their fight against Polliver at the inn at the crossroads. This fight appeared in the show in episode 4.1. Now as for Rorg and Biter, sheesh, Rorg and Biter are actually pretty big characters whose adventures span 3 books and who have significant interactions with Arya, Jaime, and Brienne. Back in book 2 they were brought north with Yoren for the Night's Watch. They were imprisoned with Jaqen H'ghar and seemed to be friendly with him, and we're not quite sure about their connection with the Faceless Men, if they have any. Keep in mind Rorg is covered with black hair while Biter is pale white. So they are symbolically Jaqen's companions of black and white. And later Brienne finds Biter's face to be a lot like putty. The two also have a really weird ability to mix in and join groups. After being freed by Arya, they kill Yoren and are weirdly able to join Amory Lorch's men. They help Jaqen fulfill his death payment to Arya, and then weirdly join the Brave Companions. Rorg then takes on the identity of the Hound and goes searching for Arya, burning a city to the ground trying to find her. It's Brienne that eventually puts them to death at the inn at the crossroads after a pretty harsh fight. Here in the show though, Rorg and Biter are nobodies, and Arya and the Hound take care of them rather easily. Next we're back at the Wall with an extra scene of Jon arriving back from Craster's Keep, and then the Night's Watch arguing about the best way to defend the Wall. Here Jon wants to seal the tunnels, but he gets voted down. Now again, very shortly after Jon's arrival after escaping Ygritte and the Thenns, the Night's Watch goes into battle. They have very little time to prepare, and certainly not enough time to seal tunnels. Now interestingly, sealing the tunnels is an idea that comes later in the book when discussing how to deal with the others. But it's Jon who is against sealing the tunnel as he wants to range north and wants to save the wildlings. Next we get an extra scene that is remarkably similar to the book between Tyrion and Bronn. Many of these lines are taken word for word. Tyrion wants Bronn to be his champion, but Bronn has been offered Lolly Stokeworth as a wife by Cersei. Now in both book and show, Lolly Stokeworth is mentally challenged, though later in the show they undo this and make her normal. Besides her handicap, in the book Lolly Stokeworth was also raped 50 times after the riot of King's Landing, and is pregnant with a bastard. I will say there may be something more to Lolly's. Before the Battle of the Blackwater, she seemed to sense danger in the Red Keep, and Cersei had ordered the women of the keep to be killed if Stannis won. Now in both book and show, Bronn is hoping to use Lolly's to take control of her mother's fief of Stokeworth, and in the book he essentially does do this. Now here in the show, this scene between Tyrion and Bronn happens rather late. In the book it happens before Tyrion's trial even begins. Now next we get an extra scene where Daario sneaks into Dany's room and tells her that he's good at 2 things, fucking and fighting, and he's all out of fighting. And so Dany decides to have sex with him. In the book, Dany and Dario's relationship is a bit different. Dany at first believes it inappropriate that she would bang her sellsword captain, so she keeps sending Daario away on missions, even a diplomatic one. But she starts worrying massively about him and longs for his return. The two do begin a sexual relationship, but it's only right before she is to be married to Hizdahr zo Loraq. Daario then becomes rather angry and unstable. Next we get an extra scene between Melisandre and Selyse, where Selyse wants Shireen to stay behind on Dragonstone, but Melisandre says she must come along. This is actually the first time Selyse shows any care for her daughter. Now in the book, Dragonstone is certainly not a safe place, so Shireen is brought north. Selyse then feels Eastwatch by the Sea isn't safe enough, so she brings Shireen to Castle Black. In the book, by the way, Melisandre has not shown any interest in Shireen as of yet. Now here in the show, the scene also has Melisandre revealing that most of her power is fake. This actually mirrors the books, where we eventually find out that Melisandre uses powders to make her flames dance, and that when she sees visions, she doesn't actually know what they mean. She just makes up interpretations. All of this makes us ask, how much is Melisandre lying about? How much is she a charlatan? For example, in the book, Orell's eagle bursts into flames at some point. Mel takes credit for it, but is it really her? We don't know. Quite strikingly, here in the show, Mel mentions that she has a potion that creates black smoke that will make a man piss himself with fear. Of course, this makes us ask, did Davos really see a shadow baby, or was that a potion like this one? Do shadow babies even exist? There are other explanations on how Renly was killed, like Stannis warging open air while he slept. This may sound crazy, but it's the plot of George R. R. Martin's favorite movie, Forbidden Planet. Next we get an extra scene of Daario gloating about getting some to Jorah before Jorah complains to Dany about how Daario can't be trusted. Interestingly, here in the show, Dany says that Jorah used to fight for the Golden Company. In the book, Jorah never fights for the Golden Company. If he had, he would have run into Viserys and Dany earlier, who once sought them out for help. The Golden Company plays an enormous role in the book, as later we discover that Varys Illyrio and the Golden Company were actually supporting a different Targaryen named Aegon, who they had hidden away. What Dany and Viserys' role would have been in this whole plan has not been fully revealed. Of course, this large mysterious Aegon plot has been cut from the show. Now here in the show, Dany reveals that she's sick of the Yunkai and their slavery, and wants to send the Second Sons to slaughter all of their leaders. Jorah says that that's a bad idea, so Dany changes her mind and instead just wants to threaten them. Now in the book, Yunkai was never conquered and never quit slavery, though they did release all of their slaves to Dany, before then acquiring more. Dany certainly never feels comfortable enough to invade them, as she is dealing with violence in her own city from the Sons of the Harpy, and needs the Unsullied to keep the peace. Not to mention, the cities of Slaver's Bay are walled, making invasion a difficult process. She does somewhat regret not going to war with Yunkai, as Astapor goes to war against them alone and is slaughtered. Then we get an extra scene with the Hound and Arya, where the Hound wants to sew up a wound, but Arya wants to sterilize it with fire. This causes the Hound to freak out. The Hound then retells the story of the burning of his face by the mountain, and here in the show he says his father defended the mountain in their dispute. Now in the book, the Hound never speaks of any bad relationship with his father. I will say it is implied that the mountain killed both their father and their little sister, so besides the disfigurement, the Hound has ample reason to hate his brother. Next we get an extra scene with Brienne and Pod, where they run into Hot Pie. After initially being reluctant, Hot Pie lets them know that Arya is alive, and she was last seen with the Hound. Brienne and Pod then figure it would make sense for Arya to head to the Vale where Lysa is, and Sansa may be there too. Of course, figuring Sansa is in the Vale with her aunt is something they could have guessed on day one. Now, the book plot of Brienne is completely different. As I mentioned in episode 4.5, Brienne went to Duskendale, then Maidenpool, then heads out to Cracklaw Point to find a fool that she thinks is Dantos. As it turns out, the fool and his comrades are actually members of the Brave Companions. As I said earlier, the Brave Companions and the Mountain's men are dispersed and are now all over the place. The fool is named Shagwell, and he's of note in that he's one of 3 men who wanted to rape Brienne back when she was captured with Jaime. There is a battle, and later Shagwell actually falls upon Brienne's dagger and dies moaning in an odd inverse rape stabbing. Later, Brienne and Pod travel to the inn at the crossroads where she runs into Gendry, and she's attacked by Rorg and Biter. Rorg, as it happens, was the second of the 3 men who wanted to rape Brienne. Again there's a battle, and again Rorg falls upon Brienne's sword and dies shuddering in an odd inverse rape stabbing. Brienne has not come upon the 3rd would-be rapist, a man named Zolo the Fat, who is the man who actually took Jaime's hand, but I imagine it's going to end in an inverse rape stabbing. Next, we actually have a scene from the book with Oberyn visiting Tyrion and becoming his champion. Now here in the show, Oberyn begins to tell a story of their first meeting. As it turns out, Oberyn had visited Casterly Rock when he was a boy and had met baby Tyrion. Oberyn notes that Cersei was very mean to baby Tyrion because she blamed him for killing their mother. The show implies that defending poor Tyrion against his mean sister was a big part of Oberyn's motivation for being Tyrion's champion. Now in the book, things are a bit different and the story goes much deeper. The story of visiting Casterly Rock is told to Tyrion when Oberyn first arrived in King's Landing. It is bookended by a very important second part of the story that Oberyn reveals just before going into battle. You see, Oberyn has come to King's Landing for justice for his sister Elia, who Tywin claims was killed by the dead Amory Lorch acting all on his own. But Oberyn knows that Tywin is a big old liar and ordered the killing because of the second part of the story. As it turns out, the entire reason that Oberyn and his sister Elia had come to Casterly Rock was to meet Jaime and Cersei. Their mothers wanted to merge their houses through marriage. However, with Joanna Lannister dead, Tywin was now not feeling the agreement. In Tywin's mind, Jaime was to marry Lysa Arryn, and more importantly, Cersei was meant to marry Rhaegar Targaryen. However, in the end, it was Elia that married Rhaegar. Oberyn's mother had thought she had won, but in the end, Elia and her children were murdered, and Cersei married the new king. Oberyn knew very well that Tywin was still playing the Game of Thrones, and this story is why he's confident of Tywin's guilt. Now, as I said, the Casterly Rock story is told before and after Oberyn's visit to Tyrion. In the book, the visit instead covers quite a few other issues. Quite significantly, Oberyn mentions that he visited a prostitute named Alayaya. Alayaya happened to know that Tyrion was visiting Shae and was tortured by Tywin at one point. So Oberyn probably knew about Tyrion and Shae's real relationship, and may have even known about Tywin and Shae's relationship. The two also talk about Dornish law and Myrcella. In Dorne, the eldest child inherits instead of just the eldest male. So Oberyn argues that since Myrcella is in Dorne, she is actually queen over Tommen being king. This later grows into a huge book plot point involving the Dornish. Of course, pretty much the entire Dornish plot has been cut from the show. And finally, we have some scenes from the book involving Sansa and the Vale. Now, in the book, Sansa has dyed her hair black and is posing as Littlefinger's bastard daughter, Elaine. Sansa, by the way, is still maintaining this identity in the book. Anyway, as in the book, Sansa decides to build a snow castle, though a big difference is that in the book, Littlefinger helps her. As in the book, Sweet Robin arrives and is enamored with how cool the castle is. Now, the show has changed Sweet Robin a bit. He's only 8 in the book and very much likes stories and his doll. The show has made him a bit more obsessed with throwing people out the moon door, which here he actually bonds with Sansa over. Anyway, here in the show, Sweet Robin accidentally knocks over a tower, the two get into a fight, and Sansa actually strikes Sweet Robin. Things go differently in the book. Sweet Robin arrives and thinks it would be really neat if his doll were a giant attacking the castle, and so he starts intentionally destroying things. Sansa then grabs his doll and beheads it. Sweet Robin then becomes so distraught that he has a seizure. As in the book, Littlefinger arrives and kisses Sansa, though this occurs before the arrival of Sweet Robin in the book. Here Littlefinger makes a speech directly associating Sansa with Cat, while in the book, Littlefinger simply kisses Sansa during their snow castle making. Now, as in the book, Sansa is called to talk to Lysa, who saw the kiss from her balcony. Though in the book, Lysa's favorite singer, Marillion, who accompanied Tyrion to the Eyrie back in season in Book 1, is also there singing to cover up Sansa's screaming. As in the book, Lysa threatens Sansa with the moon door, and Littlefinger arrives to save Sansa and confront Lysa. Now here in the show, Lysa does briefly confess to her murder of Jon Arryn, but in the book the confession is much longer and more developed. Lysa poisoned Jon Arryn because Jon Arryn wanted to send Sweet Robin away with Stannis. Of course, Jon Arryn only wanted to do this because he discovered Cersei's incest and knew war was coming, but he apparently never bothered to tell Lysa that. The fostering of Sweet Robin is actually an issue that's talked about quite a bit in the first book, but of course cut from the show. And during this confession, we also find out that Lysa sent the letter to Cat back at the beginning of Book 1 in Season 1, which caused Ned to come to King's Landing in the first place, all because Littlefinger told her to. Essentially, the entire Stark-Lannister feud and the War of the Five Kings was set in motion in the first season and book by Lysa and Littlefinger. Additionally, in the book, Lysa also reveals that Littlefinger's rise to power was mostly due to her. She got him his first post and later his job as Master of Coin. And Lysa also reveals how painful her life has been and why she was estranged from her father. When Lysa was young, she got pregnant by Littlefinger and was forced to have an abortion. All she wanted was to marry Littlefinger, but instead her father forced her to marry Jon Arryn, a smelly old man. So, as in the book, Littlefinger pushes Lysa out the moon door. However, in the book, Marillion is there as a witness, and a patsy. Littlefinger immediately has Marillion arrested for Lysa's murder. Now, one other huge difference between book and show regarding Lysa's murder is that Sansa happened to lose a shoe out the moon door. In a twisted version of Cinderella, Sansa may eventually be blamed if the shoe is found when people go to retrieve Lysa's corpse. And that is all for episode 4.7. See you in episode 4.8.